Hello there, LinkedIn family. Jonathan here from potency.world, a revolution in girls' education from 11 to 18. So, as part of this overall project, the thing that most holds women back is that they don't see themselves represented in areas that they may well have an interest in. So our discussion today is, where are all the female leaders? I'm joined by such an array of women entrepreneurs, business owners, and leaders from around the world that I'm not. So the question that really is the main emphasis of this call, where are all the female leaders? I guess the first thing I want to know is, what does a female leader look like to the ladies on our panel? Austra.
I think for me it's pretty much the first thought that came in my mind is just women in leadership position. Or like a business owner, somebody who is in that leadership space, impacting. And
what do you mean? So a business owner is one thing. What do you picture when you say female leadership?
I would say I definitely see somebody who is confident, but also cares about people and wants to support people that she's working with or leading. So it's not just about position or having the name of the position, and it doesn't even have to be leadership position, because leadership position can be somebody who's a mom. Because you have huge impact on kids, which are our future, so I think it's a person who they are confident about themselves and within themselves, because it's hard to lead when you don't have that sense of groundedness around you and in who you are, but also somebody who wants to help, wants to support others, and not only point fingers of you have to do this or that, but they're also ready to lead by example.
So from that, I got a lot of sensation, bodily sensation, feelings, thoughts, emotion type things. Paulette, given the double blow of being a woman in tech and also a woman of color in tech, we know that representation is extremely important. So how did that affect you, and how did you get to where you are?
Thank you. How did it affect me? In many ways, actually. Even the fact that I had all the necessary qualifications, I was overqualified, but not having access, lack of representation, not being having to deal with the notion imposter syndrome, because it doesn't apply to me, because growing up as a young child, I was always told to always do my very, very best. So for me, being in a space, an environment that was unkind, dealing with microaggression, dealing with, being victimized, overcoming and understanding that actually, no matter what, I've got a job to do, and I would always put my best foot forward. But how it impacted on me really was through my mental health, and I felt that, that I wasn't good enough because of how I was treated, not how I felt about myself. Do you see what I mean? When you're in a situation and you're good, but you're in an environment where you're like, actually, you're not good. And I'm fighting with this environment or the people in there. And, there was a culture of that they were better. And it was like, no, it just didn't fit. It was like a jigsaw, but it didn't, it was an odd piece out. So how did I deal with it? I did it in the most humble way. And I would challenge in a way where I knew I was right, but I would always have evidence to back up why I knew I was right. And sometimes when you're losing a battle, sometimes you just have to say, okay, then fine, and move on. And because I was able to move on, that's where the opportunities I found, because I met some really nice people who said, Paula, you're exceptional. And they empowered me to push forward. So sometimes you can be in a situation where you do feel unwelcome, but then you can get an opportunity to move from that and then do better. So that's how I dealt with it. I just kept pushing, really.
So picking your battles, And as is said to me on many occasions, having to prove yourself 2 times, 3 times as much as a male equivalent just to get your point to be understood.
Oh, correct.
Sherine, we've got a long-standing relationship, even though I haven't seen your new hair till today. What did female leadership look like, feel like to you?
First of all, if it's okay, I want to say to Paulette, I mean, it's really interesting you bringing up the imposter syndrome situation and that difference between the two. I knew how good I was, but the world was telling me I was not. And there was this gate or whatever that kept blocking you. And a real leader is about someone that says, okay, I've got to get creative, right? I've got to move out of where I am and I have to move around it or through it or over it, whatever it takes, because I know there's something else out there. So I think the idea of what a leader is, and I mean, there are lots of different styles of leadership, but I think they hold some really basic beliefs. And one of that is the belief that they can do, right? They have a sense of what it is they want. And even though the ground might not seem right now, they know intrinsically they're here. And I loved what you said. I had a job to do, Paulette, and that was really important. And I think a real leader keeps that focus there. I have a job to do. If it doesn't matter what that job is, if you're a mother, then that job is to make sure that your children are okay and they are functional in the world, right? You want to prepare them for the world ahead so that they can eventually move out into the world and look after themselves and bring their own children up. So you have a real goal there, but we have lots of goals as a leader, I guess. And so I think when I think about a leader is 1, knowing where you want to go, 2, having the resilience and the confidence to come back on it and check things out. And I loved what you said, Paulette, particularly about the creator, is learning to be able to respond with the evidence, because actually we have to learn to work within the environment that of those that are perpetrating us or saying to us that you can't do this. Well, you've got to give evidence, because evidence is the only way that they can sometimes understand, right? And that's one of the biggest things that we get told as women. Well, you know, we talk like airy fairy people, right? We are in this different world. Whereas, unfortunately, and I think myself quite sometimes is that I'm not always so clear. But when I am clear, boy, oh boy, there's a difference in how I approach it and how I say it. And I'm actually more able to hold my state, my emotional state, because I know that I've got those tools and I've also got something that fits with my alignment of my mission. So I think a leader has to know what her remit is, has to know where she wants to go, has to look at the big picture and have that sense of, okay, there's going to be many balls in the air. How do I navigate all of those things in a way? I may not be able to do it all in the same time. Maybe I need to be able to do it, stack it up, but really find a way to navigate that path. And I think a leader shows resilience and flexibility and the ability to adapt.
I like everything you've said, and I would only notice that, again, you describe the big picture from looking out as a leader, but we're struggling at the moment to see a picture of representation, which is the problem, and that's why I'm coming back to it. We've been joined by some others in the room. I just want to throw in a quick story from The Authority Gap. So the author of the Authority Gap is Marianne Seacart. She's doing a TED Talk this week and couldn't come on this call. But basically, there's a story in there where a woman was encouraged by her friends. They said, "Oh, you've written a great book. You should publish it. Definitely send it to publishers." She was really enthused. She sent it out to 60 publishers and got nothing. And then she thought, okay, I'll do the experiment. So she set up a male version of her name email and changed the name and sent it to just 6. And from 6, she got 4 immediate yeses and 2 constructive feedback. So Shelley, when we spoke, we ended our call and you said, "Oh, I don't really think I've been traumatized, but obviously I've had to fight all the way and do it all myself." So tell us a bit about that.
Well, I mean, listen, I was the only female CEO top 25 in market research my entire career. And, you know, when I had the idea to migrate research from offline to online, I don't know if any of you have ever taken a survey on the internet. Have you taken an online survey?
Yeah.
Sorry, not sorry, but I'm the mother of that invention. I was told by every male boss of mine that it was not the right time because nobody was online and I had to wait for the right time. And, you know, had I have done that, I would not be where I am today, you know, which is the mother of that invention. And, you know, it's just pretty crazy. You know, when you think about the masculine, they're very linear, analytic, and they follow a pattern of what's been done before, very status quo. And, you know, and you know, for me, it was just talking to the head of research from Procter & Gamble a very long time ago. I think it was probably 1999, and asking him when is the right time to come and talk to Procter & Gamble about migrating research from offline to online. And he said next week. And so when I came off the stage, all my bosses said, what did you talk to him about? What did you talk to him about? I said, I just asked him, when is the right time? Because you all told me I had to wait for the right time. And he said next week. And so they all told me that Paul would go, John would go, Ringo would go, and Star would go. And I said, but what about Shelley? And they said, it's a boys club and that's the right group of people to go. And I said, then I'll cancel the meeting and wait for the right time. You can all wait for the right time. And of course, that's when I started my own company, realizing that I'd rather be in charge and I need to be my own boss, because if I'm going to wait for men to always tell me when the right time is, I'm never going to win. And, you know, I think waiting for permission or looking for others to tell you who you are and who you need to be is never going to, you know, you can try to be someone some of the time, but you can never be someone else all the time. And being your authentic self, Oscar Wilde says it best, be yourself because everyone else is taken. That was my heartbeat moment, you know, following your heart, not your head, because your head is the textbook. You're going to read what someone else already has done. And, you know, when you know, for me, there's two types of people, those that see what they see, which is the status quo. You follow the path that everyone else has taken, and those that can see what's possible. And that's scary, you know, seeing what hasn't been done or what you want to do, but it seems unimaginable because it's not out there. And that's risky and that's scary, and no one else around you believes you or believes in you or tells you you can't or you shouldn't or don't, or that's bad, or you're gonna, you know, not succeed, or, and then you kind of think to yourself, that imposter syndrome, Shireen, that you were talking about, well, I don't fit the mold. Well, I've never fit the mold because I don't want to wear the ugly shoes like the men with the strings, and I don't want to wear the shirt up to here. I don't look good in that. And you say, but that's my predecessors and that's what they've done. And you get dinged because you don't do it like them. And you kind of say, well, I'm supposed to do it like that. But then the other side, he says, but I don't like it. And then you become me and you say, well, okay, I'm going to have the new nickname Chief Troublemaker, which is what I gave myself. So you give yourself permission to break the rules that make no sense and create the new ones. And it is scary, especially walking alone. Until you say, well, maybe others will come with you. And then you won't feel alone. And it's not as scary. And it's a hell of a lot more fun. That's the path I decided to do. And once you decide to do it, my mother always says, it's like wearing a new pair of shoes. You put on the high heels, you look different than all the other guys around you, and they pinch the first time you wear them, but the more you wear them, the more comfortable they get. And you get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's the story of my life, the story of my career. And
you only
I'm a well-known chief troublemaker.
You are a chief troublemaker. I only wear my high heels at the weekend, so they're still wearing in. What's interesting, and so I want to come to Sian, I think, next, because we've not talked a lot, but what is really evident, and Shelley and I, we laughed about this, is that without exception so far, every leader, female, that's pushing the envelope is neurodivergent. Sian, tell me about yourself and what's your perspective on where all the female leaders are?
Well, I mean, I think that female leaders, I think there are many and everywhere, and the challenge is the opportunities for them to lead and be elevated to leadership positions. I think that, most recently, for the majority of my career, I was working in predominantly female-run, owned companies. Most recently, I was working in a male-centric industry and company, and it was really eye-opening in terms of the lack of pathways and opportunities for female leaders. Whilst, amongst my peers and my colleagues, there are many women who are leading and capable of leading, but not being given the opportunities within the workplace to be elevated to that status and that sort of authority and responsibility. And I think, Shelley, what you were saying about being comfortable, being uncomfortable is really what you need to do in order to create those pathways where they don't exist. Mm-hmm. Particularly in companies where maybe they're not used to, women driving that agenda, driving change, advocating for themselves and their peers. I think that that's a big part of it, and it's creating those pathways where they don't exist. And within some industries, some companies, there's definitely less opportunity than in others.
Well, I was sent the McKinsey Women in the Workplace 2023 reports, which collected information from 276 participating organisations employing more than 10 million people, and they surveyed over 27,000 employees and 270 HR leaders, and it ties in a bit with the authority gap. So men will promote other men 14 times as frequently as they'll promote a woman who produces the same results, and the gap in this representation. So a woman advocating for a member of her team will beat the door down of the payment rewards department, for example, and advocate for that other person, but will not do so for themselves. So
well, it's the same thing that women will brag about everyone else except for themselves.
Yeah.
You got to brag about yourselves, just FYI.
Mm-hmm. Vicky, not Vicky Paul, but the other Vicky. Tell me about what you saw because we spoke briefly, but when you were going to where you wanted to be, who was there leading the way?
For me, everyone keeps saying that I've broke the glass ceiling with what I do with space and construction, but I haven't. I go to schools to talk to people now, and there was people out there like Katherine Johnson, at the beginning of the century, that without her mathematician and her orbital mechanics, the guys would never have been in space.
And you know what? I've never heard of her.
Exactly. And I go out and talk to people about this. And when we look at the world wars, where the men were on the front lines, who were the people keeping industry going? Who were building the houses? Who were fixing the planes when they came back? It was women.
Yeah.
So when I start talking to these young girls that get laughed at when they say, I want to go and be a mechanic or I want to go and do this, I look at them and go on, girl, off you go. And when I wanted to go in and do construction and everything a few years ago, everyone was like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I decided, all right then, and took on a big heritage project. And it wasn't a small one, it was a multi-million-pound one. And I decided to do it with a charity because, let's not make things easy for myself. And I've done it with volunteers and I've reskilled a community to do it. Because you know what? Us women don't do things easily. Why go out there and get construction people to do it for you? Why not skill people to do it instead? So let's rebuild a community as we rebuild the building. What's come on from that is we've now got 4 heritage projects where we're rebuilding communities as we and you know what? We've got women, we've got young children coming down, and it's not just all about a building. It's all about how we're bringing communities together, how we're making it a norm. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what background you come from. We all join together, we share stories, and it's that knowledge transfer that is happening. Years ago, you used to have Mr. Jones, the joiner, and he passed it on to Mrs. Jones, then daughter Jones and son Jones. Never happens now, and we're losing these niche skills. So let's reinvigorate it. Let's get that older individual that's 75 and 80 to sit down and tell that story to a younger individual who will then share how to go on WhatsApp and call his grandkids.
Yeah.
So it's all about how they organically do it together. And that way it's not pressurized. It's not in a college. It's not in a university. It's people sitting having a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and just discussing life and hitting down a few walls. And it's not metaphorically either. But as me and Jonathan spoke, I was diagnosed neurodiverse, but I was always the naughty kid. And I love the way Shelley said, I was called a disruptor all the way through school. And I was like, so what? So what? I'm a disruptor. I was called it all the way through. A few years ago, I got put up for Disruptor of the Year. And
Really?
You know what? I embraced that and I went, hell yes. And everyone else was like, I'd be really embarrassed. Hell yes, bring it on. If I'm a disruptor and I've upset people, bring it on.
You know what? Why don't I have a huge LinkedIn following. I have 350,000. Why don't we tell stories about all the disruptors?
Yes.
Share disruptor stories.
Yes.
Should we do it now?
Let's start the disruptor chain.
Okay,
Oh,
I'll tell you what, before we'll do that in a moment, but I want to get Vicky Paul's perspectives on this so far.
Honestly, Jonathan, let's tell disruptor stories.
Can I just say something? I hate the word leader because a leader leads. It should be an enabler or an empowerer because that person works alongside people and brings them along with them. A leader, in a definition, stands in front and barks orders.
Enabler, yeah? Okay. Well,
enabler or an empowerer.
I'll tell you what then. Vicky Paul, you can give us your perspective. Then Dunja can give us her perspective. You can then run these stories you're going to tell. And by the time you come back to me, my background will have changed. How's that for a deal? Yeah?
Well done.
Yeah, you've got
See,
to
I'm
move
disrupting things again.
You have.
By the way, though, Vicky, I always say leadership is not about age; it's about action. And
it is.
All can lead. It's not about command and control. It's about action.
No, I always say with the wolf, where does the wolf always go?
What?
In a pack.
Oh.
When a wolf is in a pack, where is the leader?
In the middle, isn't it?
Or at the back, because he's watching everything.
Ooh.
He's never at the front.
You're throwing some interesting and unverifiable facts.
Can I quickly just jump in? I mean, I just love this whole thing we're coming together. And as Vicky said, Vicky, my book's coming out tomorrow and it's called Disrupt. I'm a disruptor. Yeah. So we're all disrupting the place because it's important that the word disruptor. At first I was thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't like it, but it's so significant because when we come up and we show up, we come collectively, we make changes. That's why that name is so important. So yes, embrace it. So what? Love it.
It is.
Yeah.
It's your why. It's what you do.
Absolutely.
If you're doing what your passion is and what you want to do, and it's who you are, then what the hell?
What the hell? Because you can be you. You can be authentic in your own skin and in how you look. Whether you feel sometimes I mentioned about imposter syndrome. I don't believe they exist, but at the same time, for me, showing up and being authentic and leading. Okay, we have to change the name. Being an enabler.
By the way, I can't change it now because I saved it as a PNG. So I was going to do it, and I know. I opened PowerPoint. I was going to change it, and no, I've changed everything. So, but
well, it could be activator rather. Disruptive is okay, but I like activator more.
Okay, I tell you what. Then on the insert before each video clip, I'll change it from where are all the female leaders to where are all the female activators.
We call it power of the pack.
Okay.
I like that as well.
So what are we going to go with then? Where are
we all becoming a wolf pack now? There you go.
We're a pack. We're the FQ pack.
Okay, so what do you want me to put on the title? Where are all the female
badasses?
All right then, Baddasses.
Yeah,
right.
Cool. I actually think that's a really nice term, Shelley, because no matter what word you would pull up, because I agree with you, leader kind of doesn't really do it justice. No. It needs to be like a community sort of feel. So yeah, badass, go for it. I agree with that.
Nice. Now, Vicky, you joined us a little bit late, so please tell us what leadership looked like to you.
I've always had quite a lot of masculine characteristics. I grew up so when I was growing up, I was quite influenced by a lot of the males. I was quite late born. A lot of my dad's friends had already had kids. A lot of my mum's friends had already had kids, and I kind of got lumbered with a lot of the blokes. So I have quite a lot of masculine characteristics. And as I grew up, I felt part of Maggie Thatcher's Article 25. So does anyone here know what Article 25 is?
No.
So if you're a girl and you're a girly girl, then you're a girl, and you will naturally fall into relationships with men. And if you're a guy and you're a girly guy, then you fall into relationships naturally with a woman. Well, because I had so many characteristics, I was kind of like left to the outliers. And as I've kind of grown up, I've kind of realized that I don't fit in a box. I am non-binary. I don't fit into that. And because there was so little leaders or so many other people out there who could identify with what I was going through, I kind of felt like a little bit of a lone wolf, Han Solo sort of thing. And I figured if I was going to go into battle, I had to have all of the information. So I would actively be an activist, and I would go off and I would forage information. And then when I had the right information, I would stand and become the immovable object, which was fine when I was speaking to my peers, but it wasn't so fine when I was speaking to my boss or the director of department. And they were like, oh my God, Vic is such a gobshite. What is going on here about? And then when I actually turned out to be right, it was someone else had given me the information, and that someone else had to be a bloke.
Yeah.
And I very quickly learned after that if you encourage a bloke to think like you and to have the same idea as you, then when it's his, he can't argue with your idea. So I made a career of doing that. There's not a single decision when I worked in sales that my boss had come up with that I didn't agree with or plant in his head. it was kind of like subversive control. And since I left corporate, it's a case of, well, I now run my own thing. I do my own business. So then I don't need to, manipulate anyone else. But then I come up against the other piece, which is the blokes out there expect me to be very dominant, be the leader because I run my own business, but then at the same time be subservient to them. So it's kind of like the other side of the coin. So most of my clients are men, and I say, if you treat me like a bloke, we're going to get on fine. If you expect me to bring you a cup of tea, I'm not the person for you.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Shelley?
what's your business?
So I run a business called Tender Response. We write public sector responses. So we do contracts, we help you find them, we help you qualify them, and then we help pull together a response. So it's sales collateral, but it's compliance sales.
You probably always get the yes, right?
Yeah.
That's my gut, is that you don't get no's.
No, not often. I have a pretty high conversion rate.
What I find interesting here is that absolutely every lady that's spoken so far has talked about how you have worked your way around a system which is up against you, and the creativity is amazing. Dunya, do you want to join us?
Very quickly before
Please.
we move on, because everyone here is so important, and I want to hear everyone's story. Just very quickly, a woman is disruptive, but a man is strong-willed.
Yeah.
Sorry, I said that, and I can just feel the hatred.
There's no hatred. It's just an understanding what's going on. And I think it's just really that we've grown up for 2,000 years in this culture where women have been made less than.
In fairness, Shireen, we'll see what happens when you ladies post this, because you may well get some hatred.
Bring it.
Yeah. Now, Dunya, are you there? Do you want to speak on things?
What would you like me to say?
I would like you to say a little bit about what leadership looked like to you, who was a role model for you growing up.
Oh, a role model. That's a very trick question. I don't really have a role model in my life. Never had. But I think I'm a little bit opposed of what you all stand for. I've never really received any abuse or controversy as such in my role as a business leader or as a firefighter for the London Fire Brigade for a very long time. So I was always working in a very male-dominant environment, and I always got treated as a woman and respected as a woman. We offer different qualities. We often not as physically strong. We need the men in our life. They've got different qualities. And we bring different qualities to their lives. But when you're in a relationship or when you have weak men around you, then you're going to have to wear the trousers. You're going to have to step up. You're going to have to rip off your skirt and do that male role. But when you have a real, true alpha male with strong values, a real warrior that can fight, that has that male strength, but yet is really peaceful and has that ability to take care of a woman, I think it's truly beautiful. So I stand very much against that we have to stand up for our female and we need to do the male role and stuff. I'm not for that. I think together you bring a much stronger and different dynamic.
Is it fair of me to say that the perception then is that this is about women leading over men, whereas you're talking about the complementary nature of binary couples in this example?
Don't know if I understand the full essence of your question, but a female leader in a business, there's nothing wrong with it. A male leader in a business, there's nothing wrong with that. If he's a shithead and a bully and an absolute toxic male, then he's a wrong person. But you get that also in a completely female dominant environment and a female leader. You get exactly the same kind of. So bring a really beautiful balance with emotional intelligence people, and you're going to have a beautiful company. You're going to have a beautiful environment. The London Fire Brigade is definitely not one of those. It's very toxic.
Mm-hmm.
It's got leaders in positions that they shouldn't be there. They absolutely have an emotional bank account of minus 100, if that's even a scale to compare it to. They've never been through any adversity. They lived still stuck in the 60s as such. But they've been promoted because they're absolutely crap at their job. And because they're working for the government, they just get promoted because it's cheaper to promote them than to get rid of them. And that's in a lot of government structures like that. But when we get stuck in there as females, and we just continuously absorb that kind of negative, I don't want to call it energy because that's going to make me sound like I'm...
Microaggressions, I think, are fairly...
Yeah, and when you get stuck in that environment and you don't fit in that anymore, just get out of it. Do your own. And I just feel like the more we try and fight it, is the more energy we give it. And I'm totally against that. So
okay, well, what I certainly took from what you just said, and I could be wrong, so correct me if I am, was that there wasn't anyone that you could look at that you've now fulfilled this role as a firefighter and as a business owner. There was no one for you to look at who was doing that. And it sounds like, well, I know the other ladies in the room, the London Fire Brigade, and there was a story about female surgeons in the UK. There's a story about police WhatsApp groups. Basically, the culture of misogyny is alive and well, and really having a quite destructive impact on many women, because the barrier to their next position is then so often, far too often, down to sexual favors, that perpetration of power. So on that downer, thank you.
If you ever go into that kind of environment that you feel like you have to give someone sexual pleasures to get anywhere in life, get out. Come on. How strong or how weak can you be?
Well, this was the thing. So the story about female surgeons showed that 75% of female surgeons, so 6 years of degree, 6 years of doctor extra, and another 3 years to become a surgeon. So we're highly qualified. 75% of them were getting told if they didn't have sex with the consultant, their career would stall. So
your education has got nothing to do. You can have 20 years of education and academic degrees. It's got nothing to do with your emotional intelligence.
No.
Like, you can be the lawyer, you can be the doctor, you can be the barrister. It doesn't matter. Your emotional intelligence has got nothing to do with that. And that's why it makes me quite, I don't want to use the word angry, but if you find yourself as a female, good looking or not, it doesn't matter, educated or not, skinny or fat, it doesn't matter. If you find yourself in that position and you can't stand up for yourself, you need to work on yourself. If you attract those type of males in your life, you need to get out. And if that happens and you can't say strongly no, or strongly like, this is it, I don't want to even face you anymore, or just go and work somewhere else because you're just a surgeon. You know how many millions of hospitals there are? Just move.
I'm going to disagree that it's easy for people to just move when they're in those high positions. And why should they have to move? I mean, I'm going to be really, think about it. Why should someone have to move because someone is toxic? Why are we promoting rubbish going up? Because that's not okay. I mean, a lot of people are promoted upwards so that it's literally that they move up and they can do less damage further up. And they don't get the company.
I know, but you can't fight those systems.
You can't fight a system. So yes, I agree 100% that the person needs to deal with their emotional self. Absolutely, and they need to find a way. But if you've worked really hard, and if you look at how many doctors, even male doctors here, cannot get promoted, they cannot move. They have to move to another country. I don't think that it's relevant to say that someone has to get out when they put so much investment in their studies.
Is that from what hospital are you talking about? Is that a study from a hospital or from the UK? Is that what you're talking about?
It was from the UK.
Yeah. The problem with the medical system is its legacy, and they don't take people off boards in the medical system. And so I think what we're saying here is, why should the woman who is so accomplished in her business have to move when what needs to happen is that person or those doctors should be removed from this? Why are we fixing women? We should fix the system.
Well,
that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say, Shelley, because one of the comments.
That is the biggest problem is we keep fixing women and not fixing the system. The system is
But that's
broken,
that's one of the problems I got from the end of what Dunja said. She said that basically we can't fix the system. You can. There's roles out there. There's a national election about to come up, guys.
Eliminate the assholes.
You know.
I mean, you just have to eliminate. I mean, why should, for someone that has studied for so long, have to, deal with sexual harassment, not feeling safe in an environment? It isn't about her skills. It is about assholes abusing you and not feeling safe and secure in an environment. In any environment, no one should not feel safe and secure. Period.
So,
Paulette,
oh, sorry,
that's okay.
Vicky.
It's okay.
We'll go Paulette and then we'll go Vicky.
I mean, I agree with what Donja's saying to some extent. I think she mentioned about emotional intelligence, but we also got to think about social intelligence. And that is the ability to understand your own and others' actions. Yeah. So, we have to think about in terms of how that individual feels. So I'm coming as a Black woman, and I'm not going to stay in a situation and where I'm feeling uncomfortable, okay, because of my skin color or because of the fact that I'm being assessed by my hair or whatever. It's and this is something that people, especially women of color, have experienced on a daily basis. So when you mentioned about that we have to be in our particular roles and we have to not particularly accept it, but it seems that you're going to get a lot of people going to be very upset because people are going through a difficult time. And it's not like, I don't think it's like a feminist approach where we're saying that we want to bring men down. What we're saying is recognize us and give us a voice so that we can have a say in what's happening, so we can dismantle this system and rebuild back collectively. And as Vicky said, is that coming together. We're not saying we're going to just do this in silo. It's coming together. Men have dominated this space for a very, very, very long time, and we've just sat down. And what we're saying is we're not doing that no more. We're not saying we're going to get rid of men. We're saying that you're going to hear us.
Vicky. Cool.
Sorry, because there's two Vickies, I put Vic. But we at least we have a distinction.
Vic.
So Shelley, I love what you were sharing earlier about how someone can be so highly accomplished. I don't think anyone of any intelligence, of any kind of emphasis in career, should be subject to mandating or degrading their body or for anything in order to be able to pursue their career. So it's regardless of education, regardless of standing. And there's the second thing, we have for so long increased the age of working. So you have these old farts who are very set in their ways, who won't retire or die, either or. And let's be honest about it. And these then kind of dictate who gets promoted. So then if you are like them, you get promoted. So they actually enforce behaviors. So I think when you've got young companies that have a strong HR team and it's the, put your pronouns on, explain the pronouns, and like the gender equality rainbow, and the fact that Adam is leaving the office on a Friday and in 3 weeks' time he's going to come back as Madeline. And the pronouns will have to be she, her, because that's how they wish to be known, and that to be accepted without kind of shh, do you know, kind of conversations around the water cooler. That has to happen with first getting rid of all of the old thoughts and then mandating change, and that can only happen with central change in leadership, and that's not just governmental. That's flat across the board.
Societal.
This comes from so Shelley, you mentioned earlier as well, I think we've had it once or twice again, I think Vicky might have mentioned it. Nowadays you have young women, young girls, AFABs, signed female at birth, saying, I want to be an engineer, an astronaut, fighter pilot, predominantly male dominated industries, and it's a case of go girl, go for it. What do you need? And we'll make sure that it happens. That's because there are so many people in our generation who've wanted that and have been told no.
Right.
Now we're old enough, we're going to everyone else because we can, because we don't give a shit, and we're going to pave the way for the younger generation, because then our sisters can achieve it, and that's how we get equality.
Okay, what I'd like to do, with your permission, ladies, is take Shelley up on her idea of you each telling a story.
Oh gosh, I've broken every rule in the book, so I am a disruptor in every way. And I just want to go back to before, because I am about conscious leadership. So I support men and women, and I don't think that women are it. You know, we are the female quotient, but it's about changing the equation and closing the gaps. And I don't think it's about taking power from men to give to women. We are about men and women leading. I'm just about eliminating assholes, period, whether they're men or women. If you're a jerk, I hire for passion, train for skill, unless you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant, or going to space, by the way. So I just applaud. And I know Katherine Johnson and what she did, you know, creating the first trajectory to the moon. And I think she is amazing, by the way. You know, everyone in space is remarkable. So I am all about men and women working together. Gender equality is not about men or women. It's about, you know, everyone doing the right thing. So
fantastic.
I think that's amazing. My disruptor story, I disrupt all the time. I think, what's my disruptor story?
You told me that you'd always been doing it for yourself, always the first in the room.
I'll tell you my Davos story. This is a good one. This is a good Davos story. We were invited. So I've created the first, I do equality lounges. I do pop-up spaces at industry conferences that are predominantly male-dominated spaces. I don't like to golf. I think it's really boring. And so we were invited to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland 9 years ago. There are very few women at Davos. I called it the place for the 17%. Only 17% have white badges, women at the world table. And so originally I called them girls' lounges. The opposite of boy is girl, the opposite of club is lounge. If there's a boys' club now, there's a girls' lounge. So I created these things called girls' lounges. And I went to a big partner and asked them to sponsor the lounge. I needed $250,000. My invitation to the World Economic Forum was, we want you to come, but you might not feel welcome. My head said, don't go. Who wants to go to a place that you're not going to feel welcome? My heart said, I have to go to change the equation and close the gender gap. And so I went to a big financial institution. It was a women's group at the financial institution. I said, would you sponsor us? And they said, we will, only if you'll change the name. We don't like Girls Lounge. And I said, have you ever heard of men object to being boys in the boys club? And I said, why are we stereotyping ourselves? And they said, it just doesn't seem serious enough at the World Economic Forum. I said, fine, I'm going to go. I will pay for it myself. So went to the World Economic Forum, called it the Girls Lounge, the place for the 17%. I took a little shack and put the shingle up, and all these power women at the World Economic Forum popped their head in. Some showed up, some men came. I had the best content in the world, and that was that. Year 2, Jamie Dimon came, and today, 9 years later, we are a double-story glass house, and we are standing room only. We trend top 5 at the World Economic Forum, and we're an unbadged space, so all women can come. We flood the streets of the World Economic Forum, and once women started supporting women, which now we're 3 million women across every industry in over 100 countries, I then evolved to the Equality Lounge, bringing men, conscious leaders. I now call it the place for conscious leaders. We are pop-up spaces, over 70 at every industry conference around the world. And we have changed the equation, and we are closing the gender gap. But that is a very disruptive move.
That is quite a story that you've set for the other ladies to follow. Oh, it's a pity you had to go first because, they're all thinking, oh no, what am I going to say? Thank you for that, Shelley. That's fantastic. The interesting, if you don't know this, the effect where we whitewash women out of history, especially scientific, is called the Matilda effect. And I learned that from watching The Simpsons. But anyway, who would like to go next with their story about cells? How they disrupted? Oh, Paulette, I knew you'd dive in there.
Have to dash out quickly. So, Paulette-Watson, I'm a global disruptor, currently leading on the Be Me digital inclusion to raise 1 million Black women and girls aspiration in STEM, AI and Web3 related careers. And I'm disrupting up the place. Won quite a lot of awards. Recently won the Global Caribbean Awards, recently won the Global Women Entrepreneur Award. I've won about 15 awards. And literally, I want to see us close the gap collectively, making sure that no one's left behind. Yesterday, we just ran our national STEM event, so the Be Me Sustainable event, and we had global leaders come and talk to young global majority women. And that was awesome. And it just resonated with me that I am contributing to society, and young girls are able to see someone that look like themselves leading from the top or enabling others. Because once they see or have a role model, they will be able to empower someone else. So that's how I'm disrupting. And I would love to invite you all. Let us collaborate and let us create a collective impact and disrupt together.
Go, girl. Hey, Paulette, will you come with us to CES? We're doing a whole AI thing.
Oh, AI, yes, absolutely. I love AI, definitely. Let's hook up, definitely. Thanks, Shelley. And thank you, everyone else.
See ya. Okay, Shelley, do you need to go?
Yeah, I do, but I want to hear everyone's stories. I feel so bad, but I'm on at 9 on a broadcast. Jonathan, thank you for bringing us all together. Will you all stay connected?
I'll put all your details in the YouTube video.
Okay. Everyone stay connected. You're invited to all of our lounges wherever we go. Come join us. Seriously, I'm so grateful. I just have to be on in 11 minutes, so I'm so sorry to jump out. But thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Treat.
Bye. So who are we going? So we've got Paulette, we've got Shelley. Who would like to go next? There you go. If you go for it then.
Me?
Yes. Sorry.
Wonderful. Sorry. No, that's okay. So I want to share a disruptor story that I influenced. It's not mine. It is mine, kind of. So I'm neurodiverse, and I'm somewhere on the LBG rainbow, and I work with lots of people who choose to be non-binary. And I completed a course about the correct use of pronouns to be respectful of everybody. So it's not ladies and gentlemen, it's all persons here present. And I'm actually very passionate about this because I think when you're starting off and you're meeting somebody for the first time, and you can always use their pronouns, or you can ask. So you say to someone, hey, Jonathan, my name's Vicky, she, her, and Jonathan can respond with their pronouns. And then that way you get to know if it's they, them, he, him, meow, it, or another style of pronouns. Well, I've actually taught my son to speak gender neutral. So when he meets people, he goes over to them and says, my pronouns are he, him. And there was this one particular instance where he was going to childcare, and there was an NVQ student, a teaching student, somewhere from the local college or university doing a placement in school that he hadn't met before. So he wanders over and says, hello miss, my pronouns are he, him, and was like, hey, this is me. And this person turned around and said, my name is Maxter. I can't remember the name, but Maxter Sam Yabbleswacky. And then it was Maxter, so what are the pronouns are for that? And so the pronouns are they, them. I said, okay. So do I call you Maxter? Do I call you teacher? Or do I call you Sam? For argument's sake. And the teacher overheard this conversation and asked my son about it. And he was so impassioned that he explained to the teacher why it's so valuable to request people's pronouns, because then you can address them correctly. And this child was 4, very nearly 5. And the long story cut short is that on the school enrollment for persons coming in for employment or for people going in from school, they've changed the sex category to pronouns because they weren't capturing people's pronouns. And this is something which in today's world you'd like to think that they'd capture, rather than just the same form from like 40 years ago that hasn't been changed. And whilst it's my son who's instigated this change, I am so proud of the fact that he stood up against a teacher and a teaching assistant in full view of his class to demand change. Not for himself. He was 4 at the time. Not to demand change for himself, but to demand change for others, so that other people could receive and be respected in the way that is important for them. And yeah, major mum moment was going on right there.
It's a beautiful story that will impact those children in the class and the adults for the rest of their lives. When there's knowledge like that comes from the children, it's so profound that,
I've had feedback from several people where he asks for pronouns and he switches fluently between them. So if he's speaking to someone and their pronouns are they, them, he flips straight into it. And never been prouder.
You've never been prouder yet. It sounds like he's going to be a fabulous young man. These stories are just brilliant, and who wants to go next? Come on, Shireen.
I'll go next. That's fine.
Okay.
I don't know too many disruptor stories of myself, but I want to just say that's a beautiful story, because this is something that's so key to me as well, because as a pregnancy coach, I really want to empower women to be able to be disruptors in the same way that you were teaching your child, and then they go on, because that's the knock-on effect, isn't it? So yeah, I do. I suppose as a nurse, I was always a disruptor, and I would always start and change new things that would be new policies that would be happening in hospitals. But one that I do remember when I first came here was I just happened to work in one of the private hospitals, which was pretty notorious at the time. And it was like stepping backwards in time. Nothing really had shifted and changed. It was the same thing. And, we would have a bell call us. A particular person would arrive every day, come in to see their patient, and then they would just say yes, and walk out. Yes, walk out. And we would deal with the entourage of this situation where nobody would fight them. No one would have a discussion with them that, hey, maybe it's a lot of our clients were getting really confused post-operatively. So I thought, no, we've got to do something. And Paulette said something which was really important. You've got to get the stats. If you want to make change, somewhere along the line, you do need to have stats. And I made it my business to go and get the stats of all the surgeons, particularly of all their patients, and basically had a look at what was happening, but none of them got confused except for one particular doctor. And I thought, well, I'm going to speak to this person, but I realized that I couldn't do it just by hearsay. So I went and got all the information, and then I just quietly, one morning, he came in and I said, I want a word with you. And of course he said, oh, and he came and sat down. He came and I said, look at all these things over here. And I look at all the reports of this. And this is what I think's happening. And he looked at me and he said, how come nobody has ever told me this? Because of the nature of how things are set up. And there's the hierarchy and the fear of there's this hierarchy of different structures. This is what happened. And I think what happened was I did something completely different. And he changed. He basically said, well, that's got to stop. And went and spoke to everybody around and sort of said, why didn't you tell me? Why wasn't this happening? He spoke to the anaesthetists, spoke to the nurses, spoke to everybody. And he actually changed his system, and he changed the system for all these NHS patients. So it really was an interesting dynamic. I didn't see all the consequences of it, but it was really nice to know that I was that person that was able to be there and make a shift without too much, actually. Just that quiet calling in, having the information, and just being very contained, I think. And I think that was where I kind of realized this is what, for me, leadership is to be able to hold that balance and be able to put your argument in a way that cannot be refuted, and at the same time give grace. And that,
please,
yeah, no, and it had such an effect with what his practice was, and then, as I said, the practice within the NHS.
I would like to say, as a former African-born lady, the understatement, the Britishness with which you've understated that enormous impact and unwavering seeking out of facts, and then cleverness to know that a man's ego needs to be massaged. Profound.
I just think that if you actually often speak to men with the same compassion and regard, and you are in your space, most educated and certainly well-meaning people will respond differently. I do believe that. So I was lucky. I wasn't in that kind of argument stage where I have had with some others, but this particular one, I was just totally different, and it was so interesting to see how that response was. Yeah,
fabulous.
And it did have a big change. Yeah,
amazing. Vicky, Vic, would you like to go next, or Sian, would you like to go next? One of you has to go next.
I might go next.
Lovely, Sian. Well, sorry, you've not spoken much this thing, so give us a juicy story or two.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't think I can deliver on a juicy story. And I think actually one that kind of came to mind for me initially is one well before I began my professional career, but back in school. When I was probably about 15, I wanted to play water polo, and we didn't have a women's water polo team. So I played on the men's team for a year until we had a women's team. But for that year, I worked really hard. I started in more games than not, and really tried to see myself as an equal player. And I think for me, it was a really big lesson in sort of what I was talking about before, where if you don't see the pathway or the opportunity doesn't exist for you, you need to create it. And just because it's not there, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go for it or you shouldn't try to make something happen. So I think it's something for me that was like quite an early lesson in that I really could carry forward throughout my life and my professional career, in that just because it doesn't exist, it doesn't mean you can't create it. And sometimes, a lot of times, that's what it takes. Is you have to have that vision and be able to follow through and make it happen, because nobody else is going to necessarily do that for you. You need to be driving. So for me, that was quite an early and poignant lesson that was impactful even today.
Very much so, and literally, it is growth mindset in action. May I ask you a question? I don't know if you identify as any neurodivergence, do you?
I don't know.
Okay. An observation I have made that may or may not be true appears to be that women, maybe because it's conditioning, it may be something in the neurology, but essentially women are better than men at understanding consequence. So girls appear to get trained from very early on, don't do that or don't do that because this is, it's an overprotectiveness, but it might lead to the ability to be visionary. Because everyone so far, yourself included, has fearlessly and with great purpose and with outcome thinking, which is an NLP technique, have gone after and changed all sorts of things. What's your thinking about that? Like, I think men are binary.
I mean, I don't think I'm educated enough on. I think it's quite a generalization to make. I just don't know enough to say whether or not. I think there's probably more nuance there. That, yeah, I'd have to get back to you on that.
So I'm being a bit too over generalistic for you to make a call on it.
Mm-hmm.
So just speaking for yourself, are you aware of seeing things in your the way you plan?
I think in terms of consequences, I think anecdotally from what I have experienced, I think that women professionally are more aware of what they do and how that impacts them. Whereas for the men that I've worked with, maybe less so, and they're more likely to take a risk or do something that might be deemed disruptive or could potentially backfire because they also deem the consequences as less impactful. So yes, that's how I would interpret that.
Well, that interpretation certainly lines up with the reading. So we're going to go to Vicky now, who's leaving shortly. So your story, Vicky, you've already told us about how you changed the aspirations of young girls. What's your story?
I suppose I've been a disruptor since an early age. I was a very naughty child. I was a very naughty child. I got lucky. I got sent to America. I did my last few years in high school over there, and they embrace people with differences, and it's a bit unlike England, where we got to do electives, we got embraced, we got to be put in sports, because I love the way you were talking, Sean, where they don't judge people just for being females or males. If you want to have a go at one of the male sports, they say, come on. And they give a level playing field to people. So I think very much that is what's grown me in my disruptive behaviours, as I call it, where they've embraced. So when I came back to the UK, I carried that into the workplace. And then from there on in, and that's why I heard what, was it Jandra was saying before from the fire service?
Oh, didn't you?
Yeah, I was a police officer when I first came back. And I understood what she was saying, where we had to put the pants on sometimes. And it was very different because it was always the females that were chucked in when there were fights or anything, because the males had this perception that females could calm a situation when it was actually they were putting them in harm. I don't know why they thought when there was a big punch up, let's chuck one of the females in there. The men will stop. But when someone's in a frenzy, they don't stop. No. So, but it's just that whole perception that, and sometimes we had to wear the pants instead of them wearing the pants. And we could think faster sometimes. And I think that's what I've took over into business. And when I came out of the police, I then went into basically embracing everything that I'd learned in America, which was the space education and the engineering. And that's why I said I wanted to try construction. And everywhere I knocked on a door and tried to get in, everyone was like, no, you're not quite right. You don't fit this. You haven't got the right education. You haven't done this for years. You haven't got... So I decided, well, if no one's going to let me do it, then I'm going to do it for myself. And with that, I went to schools and I've embraced the whole thing. I've also gone and worked with people like Airbus and stuff like that and embraced the educational routes for kids to get apprenticeships. because that's the most important. It's about how, on a bigger scale, we change the narrative. And I loved what Vicky said, because we're peers for young people. And if we show them a negativity or how not to act, then they're going to carry on acting badly. We have to be the positive role models for them tomorrow, and we have to show them what's right and wrong and be the good person. So if we do something bad, it shows bad on them. So if we can embrace the change positively, and one of the favorite sayings I have on my wall is Muhammad Ali, is if your dreams aren't big enough, oh God, I can't. I'll have to look up at it.
It'll always be the way.
Yeah, I know. Basically, Muhammad Ali's got. I've got it up on my wall, and it says. Wait there, I'll go and have a look at it now, because it's one of my favourite sayings. If you
What was it? Say it again.
It's all right. It says if your dreams aren't big enough. No, I've looked away at it again. You knew that, didn't you, love?
Well, you know,
if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. There you go.
Like
there
it.
you go.
Like
yeah.
it.
So basically, I always try and do everything in life that scares me, because I think that's the best way forward, stepping out of a comfort zone. And
Absolutely.
I think I've heard all the stories of everyone in here today, and I'm humbled by half the things that I've heard, because I think you're all great. And I think it was right what everyone was said earlier. It's not that we're trying to battle. I think everyone has a role in life. And I'm not saying that men are the evil, they're not. No. I work alongside men day in, day out. I have great banter with them. And they respect me and I respect them. I think everybody has a job to do in life. It's just how we all respect each other. And I think that's what Vicky was addressing before when she was saying she was teaching a little one how to do pronouns. And it's all about that respect. The right person needs to do the right role. The right person needs to treat people with respect. And I think that's what it goes back to. And the further we can improve that respect straight across the board, that's what we need to do. And
Fantastic. Sorry.
No, that's it.
Well, fantastic. I know you need to make a move. What I would say to anyone watching this video on YouTube or any of these ladies' channels is their LinkedIn contact details will be in the show notes. Connect with them, especially if you're a young female entering the business world or whatever world, and you're looking for someone who you can ask maybe to be a mentor. We've had a fantastic conversation. I hope to do more of these. So see you soon, LinkedIn family.